The United States has a singular role in this story, not only because of its power, but because when Ukraine gave up nuclear weapons, America was part of the assurance that Ukraine's sovereignty and borders would be respected. This is a moment for American leadership, a moment for America to show that it can honor its international treaty obligations, not out of charity, but out of its own enduring role in global security.
Back to the channel, and thank you for joining me once again. Today's conversation is one of those moments that has really taken on a life of its own online. It's the kind of topic where people are not just reacting to a speech, but reacting to a feeling, a sense of familiarity that has sparked discussion across different platforms, comment sections, and conversations. Because what people are noticing is not just what was said, but how it was said. And when that happens, when tone becomes the focus instead of just content, it usually means something deeper is at play. Now, at the center of this discussion are two speeches, one delivered earlier by Prince Harry during his engagement connected to Ukraine, and another more recent speech delivered by Charles III. And as more people listen to both, compare them, and reflect on them, a pattern begins to emerge that many feel is hard to ignore. Let's be clear. This is not about claiming that one speech is copied word for word. That's not what people are saying. What people are reacting to is something more nuanced and in many ways more powerful. They are reacting to similarities in tone, in emotional direction, in the way ideas are framed, and in the way the message is delivered. They are reacting to echoes. They are reacting to familiarity. And when familiarity becomes noticeable on this scale, it naturally raises questions. Because people remember how a message made them feel the first time they heard it. They remember the tone, the emphasis, the pacing, the sincerity behind the words. And when they hear something that triggers that same recognition again, they don't ignore it. They pause. They compare, and they ask, where have we heard this before? Now, to understand why this comparison is happening, we have to go back to what made Prince Harry's speech resonate so strongly in the first place. When Prince Harry spoke about Ukraine, he did something very specific. He removed himself from traditional authority. He made it clear that he was not speaking as a politician, not speaking from a place of institutional power, but speaking as someone who understands service, who has witnessed the human cost of conflict, and who has engaged directly with the realities that many people only hear about from a distance. That approach matters, because when someone speaks from lived experience, the message carries a different kind of weight. It is not just constructed, it is grounded. It is not just delivered, it is felt, and audiences can sense that difference. They can tell when words are coming from a place of personal connection rather than abstraction. And that is why that speech stood out. It did not feel distant, it did not feel detached, it felt immediate, it felt human, it felt real. Now, when another speech appears and begins to reflect similar themes, when it emphasizes humanity, responsibility, awareness, and the need to remain engaged with global challenges, it naturally invites comparison. Not because people are looking for controversy, but because the resemblance feels familiar, and familiarity is powerful. It triggers recognition. It connects experiences. It creates a sense that what is being heard now has been heard before in a slightly different form. Now this is where the conversation shifts from simple observation to something deeper. Because what people are really talking about is influence. Influence does not always appear in obvious ways. It does not always come with acknowledgement or clear attribution. Sometimes it appears as alignment, as convergence, as a shift in how ideas are expressed across different voices. And what many observers are seeing here is that the tone established by Prince Harry has become part of a broader conversational framework. In other words, the way he framed the issue has resonated enough that similar framing is now appearing elsewhere. That is significant, because it suggests that influence is not confined to formal roles or traditional structures. It suggests that a voice can carry beyond its original context and shape how conversations unfold in other spaces. Now let's pause on that idea for a moment, because traditionally, influence has been associated with position, titles, roles, institutions. But in today's media environment, influence operates differently. It is driven by resonance. It is driven by authenticity. It is driven by the ability to connect with people on a human level. And when someone consistently communicates in a way that resonates, their voice begins to shape the conversation, whether directly or indirectly. Prince Harry's speech did that. It created a tone. It created a framework. It created a way of talking about the issue that felt grounded, human, and accessible. And once that framework exists, it does not stay contained. It spreads. It influences. It becomes part of how others communicate, even if unintentionally. Now, again, this is not about proving that one speech directly borrowed from another. It is about understanding perception, because perception is what drives conversation. And when enough people perceive a similarity, that perception becomes part of the narrative. It becomes part of how the moment is understood. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. People are not just hearing two separate speeches. They are hearing connections. They are hearing echoes. They are recognizing a tone that feels like it has already been established. And that recognition is what fuels the discussion. Now, let's talk about authenticity again, because this is central to why this comparison feels so strong. Authenticity cannot be replicated easily. It cannot be manufactured through structure alone. It comes from alignment between experience and expression. When Prince Harry speaks about conflict, service, and responsibility, he is drawing from a background that includes direct involvement, personal experience, and long-term engagement with these issues. That creates a foundation. And that foundation gives his words weight. It gives them credibility. It gives them a sense of immediacy that audiences can feel. So when similar themes appear in another speech, the comparison naturally highlights differences in origin. One feels like it is coming from lived experience. The other feels like it is reflecting a framework that has already been established. And that distinction matters, because audiences are not just listening to words. They are listening for authenticity. They are listening for connection. They are listening for something that feels real. And when they sense that difference, it shapes how they interpret what they hear. Now, let's expand this even further. Because what we are seeing here is not just about two speeches. It is about a shift in narrative leadership. It is about who is shaping how global issues are discussed. It is about who is setting the tone that others begin to adopt. And increasingly, what we are seeing is that Prince Harry's voice is part of that influence. That is a significant development. because it shows that influence is no longer tied exclusively to traditional authority. It shows that impact can come from outside established structures. It shows that authenticity can carry further than position. Now think about what that means. It means that someone does not need a crown, a title, or an institutional role to shape global conversations. It means that connection with audiences matters more than formal authority. It means that the ability to communicate in a way that resonates can redefine where influence comes from. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. Prince Harry has established a voice that resonates, a voice that connects, a voice that people remember. And when similar tones appear elsewhere, people notice. They recognize the pattern, they make the connection, and they talk about it. Now, as this conversation continues to grow, it is important to understand why it resonates so strongly. It resonates because people are not just comparing speeches, they are comparing impact. They are comparing authenticity. They are comparing origin. And when those comparisons are made, distinctions become clearer. One voice feels like it set the tone, the other feels like it followed it. And that perception, whether debated or agreed upon, becomes part of the broader narrative. Now, as we move toward the conclusion, one thing becomes very clear. This moment is not just about a single comparison. It is about a broader shift in how influence operates in the modern world. It is about how voices outside traditional systems are shaping conversations within those systems. It is about how authenticity is becoming a defining factor in public communication. And it is about how audiences are increasingly aware of tone, framing, and origin when they engage with speeches and public messaging. Prince Harry's influence, as seen through this discussion, reflects that shift. It reflects a new kind of leadership, one that is not defined by position, but by connection. One that is not dependent on titles, but on resonance. One that is not limited by structure, but amplified by authenticity. And that is why this conversation continues. Because when people recognize influence, they talk about it. When they hear echoes, they notice. And when they see a shift in how narratives are shaped, they engage with it. That is exactly what is happening here, and that is why this moment matters. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more conversations like this.